I'll be honest, I can't remember if Bank was in the pool at that moment in time. I think that's right after it got taken out. It might have. It might have. What I remember, though, is the Evil Geniuses setup that they usually play around Marble Stairs. But either way, we'll see what DarkZero have in store for us here. We're already getting into the ban phase, folks, and we're going to be starting up with a Thatcher ban.
Thatcher, again, lining pretty well with the meta that we have been seeing, even though it is a newer map. The meta aligns pretty well.
I was going to say the meta of 6 years.
Yeah, the meta of just knocking him out whenever you want to. Once again, Thatcher 2 universally useful due to his ability to knock out, or well, previously knock out, but more recently disable devices, and we'll see Maverick followed up there. So no direct wall takedown abilities here for the attackers.
So what does DarkZero want to do here? A ban that I would love to see, and one that you guys probably want to see at home as well, is Kaid come out here because of the hatch play that goes on around this map. And with Thatcher out as well as Maverick, it's going to make things very difficult for DarkZero on this offense. They're actually going to remove MOZZIE instead. So that's obviously going to play into the hand of that deniability. And MOZZIE best in the game on the patch that we're playing on when it comes to that because of how potent the Roni is, as well as just everything else he has in his kit. It's going to be Astralis to take out Kaid instead.
Yeah, Kaid will follow that one. And just to clarify, folks, we are not playing on the most recent patch. We are going to be playing on the one before that. The reason being, we wanted to keep the competitive meta relatively the same spot as it had been throughout the rest of the stage. We didn't want to introduce a major change like that for the final 2 playdays. That's why we are staying on that older patch. Anyway, getting into the action here now. It looks like it's going to be a basement start for the Astralis roster here, bringing, of course, the expected operators, specifically the castle there, to be able to knock out and, more importantly, limit the attacker's capability to get in so easily, but they'll obviously have immediate counters for that in Sledge and quite a few of the other operators they'll be bringing here too.
Yeah, this is actually going to be a pretty interesting offensive half for both of these teams. Canadian's going to go in for a 6-pick here onto the Monty, and you might be asking yourself why necessarily, but honestly, it makes sense. I mean, looking across the board right now, especially, you know, taking in part what these bans are going to do to Bank, this is going to make it where the hatches open almost instantaneously, and they can get any wall that they want. So it's going to be up to the defense to try and really get in the face of the offense, and this is what Canadian's going to stop with Monty. You cannot try and get in Monty's face. It's not possible. You know, he's constant pressure, and the moment that you stop, you know, paying attention to him, he's more than likely going to slide that shield and try and kill you. So it's constant pressure that Canadian can, you know, emit onto Astralis. They'll have to respect that, as well as all the things that can be going on with these walls, as well as these hatches.
So let's take a look here. If anything crazy is going to be coming out from Astralis. Not looking like it, though, as pretty much the usual holds are going to be set up for a basement play, although obviously this is going to be a new iteration of the map. A lot of the core elements of the design of this map have remained relatively the same. It's upstairs and a couple other areas where we've seen teams set up, and this is going to be a great fallback position here for Astralis here. Lots of room to fight out in square office, and then, of course, they leave the hatch open, so they have the transition route to go back down, and I believe they've done it for both of the hatches as well, so that's 2 options of escape routes here for the Astralis members if things go awry in this more aggressively pointed play.
All right, now the real question is, what's going to be the call here from DarkZero? They'll have to get some very serious intel on this mid-floor, and more than likely will be looking to push into the actual site. Now, this is going to have to be a cautionary tale for DarkZero, mostly because of the hatch play that can come through for Astralis, especially around this bottom square area. They'll have to be cognizant of that because they can definitely run into a lot of problems here with J90 currently inside of Archives here. So looks like Eclipse, as well as Canadian, actually motioning up to the bottom of square here. Eclipse actually down low. He'll be popping open the wall here soon. And Astralis, it's up to them to try and get in the way now and thwart DarkZero's plans, but it seems like they have so much control in this space already.
Going to see Eclipse start to drone his way forward and support the position from Canadian. The same will be said for NJR here as they work very quickly to open up that first reinforced wall, blocking themselves out from server. It's not going to obviously block them anymore, but what we will start to see is the Toxic Babes coming in from Astralis here. Retro chucking those out is not going to be able to take this down to too low of a point in the round, so ultimately this is just delaying things for a couple more seconds and buying additional time for Astralis to rotate into position. That's not the only thing that Astralis is trying to do, though. We can see over here inside of the Archives, you've got a position maintained by J90 where he could very easily pinch against that server pressure downstairs. However, he's going to need to find a way to initiate upon it, and that's going to be the difficult part from the position he's currently playing. You can see the silhouettes from DarkZero. They're set up on top square as well, so aggression in overall from Astralis is going to be very, very difficult to throw out on the map right now.
Smokes out from DarkZero inside of sight, but this is all just a baiting gesture from them as of right now, trying to get rid of all of these nitro cells down low and make things a little bit easier when it comes to the plant attempt. Remember, DP Fire still has one of those nitros as well, so he could play spoils to the situation overall. And unless Astralis have something else to say about this, especially with J90 still around this archive space. Canadian will start the plant off, and it's going to be very easy for him, especially with that shield on his back. Almost impossible to try and stop him at this point unless they have an explosive. It's going to be Eclipse to try and pop that off as Iconic tries to hop inside and get something done here, but it's not going to to really get too much done. Canadian will be next up to try and move forward and find some info for the remainder of his team, but just look at how much time they've had. DarkZero really patient inside of that mid-round as well, waiting to see what Astralis' next move could have been, and they've capitalized on it beautifully. Now it's up to Eclipse to try and get this case down.
Astralis now trying to find someone to wait out the aggression here. We're going to see Shuttle push forward, but he has no angle on the planter, so that will go down pretty quickly. Panda as well finally cuts off the flank from J9. Oh, Shuttle will get one for himself, but Hyper quickly course corrects and leaves Retro all by his lonesome here on the smoke. Out of Toxic Babes as well. Had an opportunity to chase down at least one of the members of the squad there, but now he's put himself between a rock and a hard place as he tries to work himself to the top of blue. Once again, no targets visibly present, so unfortunately he will get himself knocked out, and we'll see the round go swiftly over towards DarkZero.
I really like what Astralis was going for overall there on that mid lane from him, especially inside of that first round to, you know, really get an idea of what Astralis wanted to do with that mid floor and adapt around it. That's why you saw that square control and everything, because they knew what the overall play was inside of the kitchen area, or rather the open area in general. And so they knew that in order to avoid that entire space, you know, they don't need to necessarily take the back of the basement. I mean, if you look overall at the structure of the basement, because it has not changed in the slightest minus the elevator, there's only one hatch that you have to worry about, technically speaking, inside of the site, and you can defend that from planting where they planted. That's why they had Canadian just simply oversee the rotate hole and then worry about square up top, because that's necessarily the only hatch that you actually have to consider when you're going for a plant like that.
So for Astralis here, we'll see, as the strategy is going to remain somewhat similar in that the fallbacks will be left open completely for the team to try and play into. Away from that, though, that means DarkZero more than likely going to be able to execute in a very similar fashion also. But what will Astralis change up? How will Astralis potentially add more aggression into this play here? As you can see again, those rotates still opened up into archives here. So they'll be trying to put that additional pressure onto square, but might run into the very same problems before. Panda is able to maintain that top square position and fend off most of this aggression. In addition, that would also come out possibly from the break room there too, if they're able to swing forward, but the castle barricade will be blocking that one off. Pretty light defense over here inside of the red hall. Not going to see a huge amount of focus on that initially from Dark or
Hyper,
from Astralis.
what are you shooting? Can somebody find Hyper, please? Can we find Hyper? What is this guy shooting? He's literally shot half of his magazine. Is he just like breaking every door across bank right now?
I think he's getting all the stuff in the back here.
Dude, he shot 100 bullets in the first 30 seconds. Like, I don't know what he's trying to get at, but hey, I mean, he got the top square door open though. So again, it looks like we're going to be using very similar strategy to what you know, DarkZero went for last time. Worry about top square, trying to get a lockdown on the bottom of square, and watch that hatch, making sure Astralis cannot push forward actually into them. And oh man, Canadian, what a shot.
Nice entry from Canadian there, catching the fact that they were not watching out for the side hallway inside of square. As a result of that, is going to leave Iconic somewhat exposed in the castle, out of the play here, inside of the second round. As again, he will falter, and that will leave DarkZero with quite a bit of comfortable control upstairs and around the square area as they were able to negotiate in the previous round.
Very strange there as well, just because that really seems as though the only area for him to consider with the castle barricade and everything there, and just to oversee that is just very, very strange. But either way, DarkZero are going to get away with the bag there, and that's going to force Astralis down off of that mid-level. And look at the time. Again, folks, DarkZero have done such a bang-up job of this throughout the game thus far, and even DP Fire will actually have to end up giving up marbles. So really, what can they do here now? Because this is more than likely going to be very similar circumstances. Obviously, DarkZero don't have the Monty this time around. They have Canadian on the Yana, like we saw earlier with him getting that frag onto Iconic. So it could be a little bit of a change up here, and honestly, more than likely, that's what we will get. They're really starting to work on these hatches. You can see Hyper will be popping the E2 hatch here. This Astralis, they're not going to be allowed to work that mid-level anymore.
See for Astralis, trying to get a little bit more aggressive here, specifically on the inside of Garage. DP Fire obviously won't be finding much there, as DarkZero have no reason to put pressure on that point of the map at this point in the round here. They're still working very much on that same transition they did in the previous attempt, although it is going a bit slower this time, only working on getting open the hatches here, or rather the wall, with about 40 seconds remaining, meaning that they're going to have to go forward pretty quickly with the overall plant execute, as they don't have a lot of excess time to try and figure out what exactly Astralis is trying to work against them. Astralis, meanwhile, once more, no direct contestation against what we're seeing from DZ at this point, mainly because they can't do it. It's going to be futile if they try to push themselves out against these positions from DZ, because they are going to be too well secured and it's too choke point heavy. Canadian, in the meanwhile, going to be moving forward here over inside of open and checking things out to see what exactly he can find down below. More importantly, if any players are going to reveal themselves, but nothing showing up just yet here. Retro will be the first kill to be picked up as he takes down NJR. With less than 4 seconds left, unfortunately, DZ are just not going to have the capability to negotiate themselves into this site in time, so Astralis will take the rebound and tie things up at 1-1.
Yeah, we reached a very strange moment there for DarkZero. I really like the idea that they had initially there, but it feels like the commitment overall just really wasn't there. You know, Pambazoo trying to excuse me, Pambazoo trying to get down marble stairs very quickly there at the end. They mostly wanted to try and flood while the plant was going down, distract Astralis on two ends, get the frags, but that is definitely not how things ended up going. The plant was going down for quite some time, and Canadian felt the need to actually drop down the hatch, which is exactly what the plan should have been overall for the whole team, but just no one really backing up the play overall, and they're going to lose quite a few bodies trying to commit to that. So DarkZero lose their first round on offense after Astralis picked things up, but not necessarily inside of the strategy on that mid floor. That was, I mean, it was just very lackluster overall. A big pick there by Canadian that they just really couldn't translate throughout the rest of the round.
Very much the case. So that will finally force the move from Astralis. We're going to see them go on to their second site, which will be upstairs on the second floor here. They'll be holding control of CEO. A little bit more of a spread out hold here, but at the same time should be a bit less complexity when it comes to the vertical play from Astralis, as they don't need to work it so heavily as they were doing on their basement hold. For DZ as well, this means a lot of control needing to come in towards the square area on the top side of it as well. Not to mention the repel pressure they'll need to put on the actual site, and in addition to that, maybe a little bit from the front doors too, as we've seen that changed up quite a bit. The defenders do have a bit more of a way to fight back against that type of pressure now, so it might not be the way that DZ want to go here. We'll find out though in just a few seconds. Astralis are finishing their setup.
I will indeed, but the big thing here is that Canadian's going to be back onto the Monty, and honestly, I really like this pickup. You guys saw how influential it was inside of the first round. Yeah, didn't have to really kill anybody, but just him being there allowed the plant to go down, as well as a lot of the pressure around that server area to go off without a hitch. I mean, who else are you going to have check bottom square without no risk, right? So having him back in here is going to allow them to play around this top floor pretty easily, especially around E3. They're going to be able to use him to clear out that space and really keep an eye on that, as well as the janitor closet as well. He'll be able to keep a nice little peep sight line there and see exactly what's going on without really any risk to his person. So should be interesting how they're going to try and implement him throughout the round. But you can already see for Astralis upstairs, this is going to be actually pretty rudimentary overall. We're going to have DP Fire playing checkers, shuttle inside of the E3 elevator. This is a position that back in the day, if you guys used to watch Laxing and OXG on this map Wreck, this is a very common spot that we see Laxing play, as well as quite a few other players just to try and manage this hallway here. And it's going to be really good for Shuttle as well, because he has that hatch to escape from, as well as those mute jammers around the double wall to his left. So a big assistance here for him, and he'll more than likely be able to play this space for quite some time unless somebody has something to say about it.
Fire waiting for an opportunity to strike, and he's got the support from Shuttle just around the corner here. Shuttle quickly checking out the echo cams to make sure there's going to be no threat above TP Fire's point of view. Gives the call out for him so he can face check it, and we'll once again as well make sure that nothing's going wrong there. And meanwhile, DarkZero still working on getting that initial control. They need to push themselves into the building. You can see a reposition coming out from NJR now. Pamba still trying to put pressure on the banana players also, but so far unsuccessfully. Now we see the smoke continue to hold things off as the Toxic Babes will start to be deployed on that front spiral staircase, preventing the ascent from Canadian and the rest of the team to move closer here. Retro still ready as well. Actually fending off the repel play that's going to be coming out against him. You got to be careful. This is really the story for a lot of the members of Astralis right now here. As they're still trying to maintain more aggressive positioning. They have to be careful. If they step 2 or 3 steps in the wrong direction here, that's going to go more than likely into the view of one of the repelling players, and that's exactly how DarkZero get the advantage they need to take the site, but they've been unable to leverage it so far inside of this round here, meaning that they're looking down a very similar situation as they had in round 2, where they're going to have to force the issue in the final 45 seconds, and they may not have the defensive utility clearance to properly do that. Here we go. First issue is they try to face check DP Fire. He wins out that fight. Doesn't get the confirmation, though, so Eclipse will actually trade onto him. Eclipse goes down as well a second later. Now the Shuttle's able to jump into the fight, but still an opportunity to revive at least Hyper, getting him back into the engagement. You're going to need to see that happen from Canadian, though, and he's a little bit busy trying to keep his own life alive. So what exactly do DZ do here?
It's a hard question, my friend, and with 20 seconds remaining, I'm assuming we're going to get it pretty quickly. Astralis, it's been patient throughout this round that has paid off so heavily for them. DarkZero trying to go for a play around Banana, but finally NJR, he'll get something done here as Canadians committing to the plant, but Hyper will go down finally. I believe he bleeds out on the floor. In a beautiful cover thus far, but Astralis are going to get away from it. Canadian, though, Side of the 1 versus 3 now with the Monty. They just need to team up, and this is going to be the most straightforward thing ever, yes. You got the Yokais in, got the shots down. Canadians done and dusted, and Astralis take the lead for the very first time here on Bank.
Astralis, once again, these passive holds, these
iconic.
these stoic setups that they tend to go for on these, at least the later 2 rounds we've played out so far, have been panning out brilliantly for this squad, as DZ is struggling to get their footing on the ground, let alone moving it up to the 2nd floor. And on top of that, no real entry pressure coming out from DarkZero inside of these past 2 rounds, which has just made it a stalemate until the final few seconds, where again, since no defensive utility is being used in the process of this stalemate, they're able to win it out through that, and obviously the positions they still maintain from the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, you know, I really feel as though the game plan there for Canadian and DarkZero was get their initial setup going inside of lobby, get the angle set up for E3, and just hold on to that for some time. See if anybody's going to try and push into you. They were very, very patient around Spiral there. They didn't want to try and overcommit themselves, but obviously as time starts to dwindle, you get pressure on the offense. It's your job to push into the site, and so they do so. But my biggest gripe with that whole thing is that they had zero information as to where anybody was. The only person that they know really was inside of a space was Shuttle, and they also oversaw that after Hyper had already gotten down. So, you know, they just had way too many blunders at the top of that staircase, and it's going to be way too difficult to try and get out of that. I mean, really, their only saving grace is if NJR gets maybe 2-3 kills inside of the actual site. Otherwise, that round is 9 times out of 10 going to go to the defense.
DarkZero unfortunately has relied on that in at least 2 instances so far here and has not panned out. So curious to see if we will get a bit of a different flair out of them. Obviously, Astralis are going to be tested to a decent degree here too. They've gone for open for their 3rd and final site before they more than likely rotate back down to the basement for the final hold, or the final one of the final 2 holds. There is an opportunity for them to try and go tellers here also if they feel the basement hold's a bit riskier, considering how DarkZero was able to win it on the 1st round. But given the way the 2nd round went, I don't think they'll have too many issues with confidence there. Anyway, we got DZ out on the board again, and they're going to be focusing on maintaining or establishing those early positions here, as we see quite a few of them working their way up the rappels now to start seeing if there's going to be any 2nd floor roam game being played out here by Astralis.
Now, there's always something I love to mention when we do end up playing this site here on Bank, and I haven't got to mention for quite some time, but I'll do it here today for you guys, because I had a conversation a long time ago with Zeronic, and he actually talked to me about this bomb site here on Bank, and he pointed this out. I always think it's a very interesting thing. This is the only site on the entire map that you can transition through a hatch into the site as well as out of the site. So you have a lot of different layers that you can actually play through this map if you're playing this site, because you can play the top floor as well as escape and make a rotation through that basement. There's so many options for you, and it really leaves the playbook wide open as to what this defense can really do. And for Astralis, it's going to be a really big boon for them, especially with the likes of like J90, who could possibly go on the roam here, and Iconic with that Valkyrie. We could see some really big plays coming through that basement. But as for DarkZero, they're going to be starting off in very similar straits. They're going to go right to the top of Square and start clearing this building.
We can see DarkZero, specifically NJR, already starting to put pressure on these upstairs positions, but again, no one revealing themselves from Astralis. They've been aces at masking themselves here inside of the first minute or 2 and avoiding any and all fights that they would normally be taking against DarkZero, as we saw in the 1st round, where unfortunately they lost far too many players far too quickly and couldn't defend the site inside of a late round scenario there, mainly due to, again, how strong of a setup DarkZero had for themselves up until that point. Astralis now has taken bit of a note from that page and is doing very, very similar things, but we will see them lose the first player inside of round number 4 here. J90 is going to get knocked out. Not confirmed just yet, but there we go. NJR quickly sledges open the top-down angle and will finish things off.
He is heat-seeking with these openings right now, just able to find him. And that down was already through, so pretty straightforward for them to get that initial pick, and that's actually going to take away quite a bit of utility from them. Then NitroCell could have came up huge, as well as J90 being one of the most influential players on Astralis right now. Shuttle being the, well, tied for that, actually, 3-0-1 currently, as he hasn't died just yet, and that's a huge thing from what we saw from yesterday. So we'll see if he can continue to snowball this into an even bigger advantage. Iconic, though, ends up burning the NitroCell for the bottom square hatch as he pushes himself up blue. Knows that more than likely people are inside of this space as Retro, trying to fight back and forth here. And should be a fairly straightforward for Iconic. He'll pick up one. And again, this is the danger of that basement and not being cognizant of these stairwells.
Great aggression finally starting to show itself from Astralis here as they need to once again shut down the aggressive play, which is starting to breach the veil on their site. But with 15 seconds left, DarkZero need to speed things up as well. Thankfully, it's going well, at least for Panba. NJR getting another kill off the frag grenade, and Panba finishing things off, but we still have Shuttle on the back flank here as he's able to take down Hyper, trying to limit the time. Now he's going to try to go for the plant denial, but I don't think he'll have the capability to do so. NJR gets it onto the ground, and now it's Shuttle versus the world for a retake in the 1v2.
Ooh, So very risky here for Shuttle, especially with the rotation that he had to make all the way across. And oh, what a shot! The oopsie-doopsie back and forth puts NJR on skates, practically on ice on that one, and now it's down to Pambazoo to try and oversee this bomb. They knew where he was. Obviously, Shuttle being 3 armor here, makes him quite loud, and yeah, he's got the red pings, and oh, he's also got the case in his hands as well. This is going to force Pambazoo to step up, and oh, this is going to be a game of musical chairs, folks. Back and forth, who can possibly win on this advantage? He knows where he is. Pambazoo, he takes so much heat, and Shuttle, he is electric today, folks, but Pambazoo finally gets him shut down, and the timer just not playing into the defensive hand, and finally, DarkZero able to get back on the board.
Yeah, unfortunately there for our last player alive on Astralis, no time remaining to continue playing that peaking game there. Had to stick the diffuser at that point, which is why you see him staying on it. Even if he let go and got the kill, would have been enough time for the counter defuse. He still would have lost the round there. So unfortunately just has to take that headshot in stride and hope that his opponent didn't peek him in time, which did not happen. So DarkZero tie us up very quickly at a 2-2 scoreline, and we are going to see Astralis return to what they've already claimed for themselves a few rounds back, as they'll be going for the basement hold next. We're not going to see the castle used, though, which is used quite heavily to block off some of the more standard angles these teams would push towards, and instead, Pulse will be brought into the play. Attackers as well will go for a 6 pick of their own, as they'll bring a Capitao in the mix.
So this should actually be extremely helpful overall to Astralis' game plan on this bottom floor. They've already won this one time, but the other loss was honestly fairly straightforward for DZ. They really didn't have to do all that much. They just had to make sure that the square hatch was watched, and they basically had a free plan, but that was in part because of the Monty play from Canadian, which obviously he's not on that once again. And the last time Astralis actually won this, that was one Canadian dropped that Monty as well. He picked up the Yana. This time around, he will be running the Capitao, and luckily enough for him, there are no Wamai discs to catch any of those. So all of these are going to land true as long as he's not launching it into an Aruni Gate or some other crazy thing happens. So that should make it fairly straightforward for these micro smokes to get in, and he should be able to prevent some space as well with those fire bolts. And overall, this is going to make it kind of easy for DarkZero to take control of that space and get that plant down in time, since the timers on those smokes and as well as the fire bolts match up quite similarly to your plant time. So, you know, it's very, very straightforward for DZ inside of this one. It's just about this opening minute and what happens with possibly Iconic getting some helpful picks through that cardiac sensor.
Iconic to continue to hold from that bottom position until he starts to see the presence work its way in from DZ, which obviously they're still building up the courage as well. They need to do some drone work here on the first few seconds of play just to make sure that they're not going to run into anything they didn't expect to see. We've also got this very aggressive hold from J9O sitting at the top of blue stairs too, which the call will be given from Iconic for him to make plays out here once DarkZero start to work their way in. DarkZero obviously are going to take their time moving into lower square when you consider the complexity of the setup that's currently come out from Astralis. They need to make sure they fully understand it before they risk throwing players at that barricade and potentially into a losing gunfight, as they've had struggles with in previous rounds. You've already seen, though, DarkZero is no stranger to taking their time with the situation. At least in one instance here, has had no problem taking pretty much no aggressive actions up until the final minute or so. So once again, it's looking like we're facing down a very similar situation for DZ as they waste out the first minute or two here, just establishing top and first floor spots before they make the transition down.
Yeah, this is a great change of pace here for Astralis on this site, because this is going to allow them to have quite a few more bodies as well as hold on to control of a lot of these spaces in which DarkZero almost needs in order to achieve what they want to, especially around blue stairs. You can see what they've done with this space. Double gates as well as that gate to watch into sight as well. So we'll likely just have line of sight for Retro and J9 if they do have to rotate back down and have to end up helping with that bomb site space. So, well, besides that, we're likely just going to be holding onto blue for quite some time. And this is where the debacle starts for DarkZero, because past that is going to take a hard entry and quite a few frags in order to open up enough space on that B site. This is usually the most defended site when it comes to the basement. That's why we see a lot of people prioritize A and just have B as an afterthought.
But we'll continue to see DarkZero look for an insertion point. And Canadian has apparently found one. Hyper as well. Everyone just dropping in from the hatches, and it's an absolute execution. 4 direct kills from DZ. No response from Astralis, and it's left J9O alone outside of the site. He cannot stop this play. It's going down in lockers as far as I can see here, and it'll be confirmed in a moment. J9O is powerless to do anything against the rush from DZ, and Canadian will seal the deal for DarkZero to push ahead yet again.
And that's how that round with Yana should have went, right there. Everyone drops, they know what the task is, and not only that, but they do it in unison. That's the biggest thing. Astralis, they get overwhelmed, and that's the beauty beauty of it when you call something like that. When you have something like a full court press happen to your team, the comms immediately get flooded because everyone sees something. So there's just chaos. Everyone has to try and win their gunfights. You're trying to calm to your teammates, and then all of a sudden everyone's dead except J90, and it's like, okay, what's he going to do inside of a 1 versus 4? Or actually, no, it was a 1 versus 5. It was a flawless round. So, like even what do you do with that? You know, especially from the position that you're playing inside a server. Bank, especially on that basement site, that's super difficult to retake. There's really not any verticality to use. It's just straight up gunfights across the board. And I don't really see, as good as J9 is, 5 gunfights in a row going his way.
Bit risky, of course, from DarkZero. Should we see those initial gunfights not go their way, things could have gone a very, very different direction, but thankfully for them, pretty much every single one of them did so. So it ended up being a fairly one-sided round in their favor once the execution actually started to work its way out. Once more, though, Astralis is just going to immediately switch the site. They are not too concerned with playing that one out again, considering they've had the most issues on it, so it's time to go back upstairs for this hold, where they've already locked this down once, and they're going to look to do it nice and easily for a second time here to end out the half and tie us once again at a 3-3 scoreline.
All right, now the big concern here, folks, for Astralis fans at home is the change-up that they're going to have on this top floor, because I'll tell you, it's a necessity, especially going up against DarkZero with Canadian. You don't want to be doing extremely similar things to the last time, especially positioning-based wise. So personally, I'm going to be very worried about Shuttle here, unless we see DarkZero go across. Then obviously they're going to know that he's in that space, but he's still going to have a chance to contest the elevator hallway. I'm just worried about him getting caught out, especially with things like grenades available to DarkZero that can possibly abuse that hatch from underneath, because you guys remember our explosive conversation yesterday. Pay attention to how many frag grenades these teams are using, because DarkZero right now, they've got 6.
Been more and more prevalent inside of the meta to bring more and more of those, since we started to see the utility mitigation go away quite a bit, or at least limited in its capabilities. So teams are starting to rely more and more on that bit of utility, and as you said, starting to bring more and more frags into the lineup, with 6 currently in the pockets of DarkZero, which is a big contrast to what we used to have, where it was very flash heavy due to the utility dump meta, where you would need to bring like 12 plus flashes just to have a chance.
Just to be able to use Ash's breaching round and Zophia's impacts, and you had to have those two, otherwise it was impossible.
So we've changed up the meta quite a bit since then. It's cool to see, of course, as we're still obviously bringing quite a bit of the old style there, at least on Panva. So we'll bring the flashes in to still dump out what remains, of course, of the utility gadgets and their ability to mitigate things like the frags and the flashes here. We're going to see that pressure put immediately onto DP Fire here, and he's very, very aware of the risk that potentially nade dumps coming out against him. And,
remember what I said about positioning and that they're gonna know where you are. They didn't drone that, guys. There's no drone in there to fight DP Fire.
He played the spot. He played literally this exact spot the last time they played the site too. So they're gonna know he's here. He was one of the biggest pain points for actually getting access to Banana too. But yeah, these nades. What are you guys doing here? They're not hitting where they need to. As DP Fire continues to crawl his way around his own death, making sure that he stays alive. Obviously, he's taking some heat. Don't get me wrong. He's under 50 HP now, but 3, if not 4, frag grenades used to do that amount of damage is not a good trade on utility.
No, not in the slightest. I mean, this is the exact opposite of the NBA right now. These are just bricks being thrown inside of checkers. Very unfortunate for DarkZero, especially because some of those seemed like they should have honestly been doing a little bit more damage than they were really doing. But the big thing there is obviously the different amount of damage that you take according to where it lands on your body. With DP Fire laying prone with his feet out, he's more than likely eating a lot of that shrapnel into his feet. But either way, Canadian's going to swing and he's going to take down DP Fire instead of checkers. You got a lot of people around this space, including Canadian, who actually doesn't get the next kill. It's going to be Hyper instead, but Iconic comes up from square, and Shuttle comes up with a big one as well. Gonna be looking for the hop out here, but it's gonna be Canadian with a double, expecting him to stay alive, but no, it's gonna be Iconic to hop out and take down Pambazoo as well. It's a 2 versus 2, but they know he's gotta rotate all the way over to the service area and get in at the bottom of square. That's gonna leave only J9 on site. He's gonna need some serious assistance and oversight in order to manage this. Remember, also no Nitro Cell on Iconic, so he's gonna have to do something. And J9, what a time to pop off. Beautiful shot on the Canadian, doesn't allow the triple kill, and now it's down to NJR for the clutch.
J9, perfect timing shot on the pre-fire there. Takes him out, and Iconic isn't even realized by NJR. He still thinks he's downstairs moving up the steps, but he's way ahead of you there. Has the lineup, has the shutdown, and it's got to be the round going over to Astralis as well, as they tie us up at 3-3, moving into the second half. DarkZero now gets their chance on the defensive side, though, so we'll have to see what Astralis can give us on the aggression.
Yes, indeed. And if you're wondering why Astralis pays that man, it's for stuff like that right there. What a beautiful triple from him, and a necessity inside of that round overall. I really like the play that they had for the top of square as well. They knew that somebody was going to be managing those windows. So, you know, he's taking his time. Iconic, worried about what that positioning is outside, waits for the call, and makes a calculated play. He knows that no one can try and get that refrag out there. And inside of the 2 versus 2, it's either dedicate to site and try and take out J9, in which he has confidence in, or both of them are more than likely going to rotate and try and take out Iconic at the bottom of square. So I love the call from him. I really like the pickups that he had inside of that one. And for DarkZero, it just came down to a moment where it was fight or flight. They had to make a decision either way, and unfortunately, it just did not go the way that they wanted it to.
Interesting 6-pick going to come out from Astralis. They did have a bit of a different strategy to deal with utility setups coming out from DZ, and that they were going to bring a Flores, but that was swapped at the last second, as DP Fire is going to bring the IQ in instead, an operator that we actually very rarely see nowadays because the new ping system has kind of made her scans a bit of a moot point, but ultimately there are still few situations where you can get use out of her ability to track down these gadgets more specifically through walls and whatnot. So this is going to be a situation where at least Astralis feel it's necessary due to the potential complexity of what DarkZero are going to bring up on their own defensive side, as they've gone for an interesting choice for the first site hole here. They're going to be over here in open area to try and take control of this one and put themselves in the lead once again on this defensive side.
We already saw a pretty unique round happen inside of this space, which ended up going down to that 1 versus 1 where DarkZero were able to get away with it after Pambazoo took quite a bit of damage from Shuttle, trying to manage that case and behind the kitchen counter, but was not capable of doing so. Just did not have the timer on his side and had to end up sticking to it instead. As for Astralis, obviously, this is going to be their first time here on offense, and as John's been talking about, we have IQ along for the ride here, as well as the double hard breach that we've been seeing from DarkZero as well. We'll be bringing J90 and Iconic on the Zoe and Sledge here, so plenty of soft breach potential to try and abuse across the board, but especially on this site, this is something that's going to play pretty well into their hand, especially if they can get J90 upstairs and start abusing some of these angles. But you can see DarkZero pretty primed in their positions right now for any gunfights that they really need, you know, especially these essential ones that could be coming up pretty quick. With Thunderbird in here, this is going to allow them to heal up as well from those, so we could see some interesting engagement soon.
Teams getting very, very close to each other, but at the same time, Canadian getting a lot of info about what's going on down on the inside of server at the moment there. Iconic has moved in, and he's the only one to do so, so there's going to be a bit of a moment of security felt here by DZ, as they know that there's not a lot of pressure in that department. They still need to figure out what's going on upstairs, though, as that's where most of the control from Astralis is pointed towards at the moment, as they've taken this for themselves. Away from that, still continuing to wait out for the first bits of aggression to really start to get into the parts of the map that DarkZeros actually have control over, and this is where Iconic, I think, is going to come into the full. Problem for Iconic is, again, Canadians had full intel on him for quite some time and saw him go up those stairs. So that is immediately going to be given out to the rest of the members of DarkZero. They'll know that for sure. Great pre-fire, though, coming in from DP Fire. Absolutely shreds Panba out of his position deeper on the inside of Archives and Tellers, and that's going to leave Astralis in the pole position here as we go into the last minute of the round.
Well, it's been a while since we had some G8 gameplay inside the NAL, so definitely a breath of fresh air to see now after Astralis get their initial blood here. Iconic going to be looking for more as well as he takes control of the bottom of square. The rest of DarkZero have some pretty controllable points here, especially around this space inside of kitchen that they'll more than likely be worrying about, especially after we see this pop in the breaching charge of Iconic. Eclipse currently managing Marble. Has one here, and Canadian will be able to keep an eye on him as to the current positioning. This cardiac sensor, I mean, he's paying off in spades at the moment. So much info coming back to DarkZero, and they'll be able to abuse this insight later on, but the biggest issue right now is that they're being hampered at the stairwell. These are going to be some very serious gunfights that they have to win. Otherwise, Astralis will more than likely be looking to execute onto site very soon. It's going to be Hyper with a big kill here. Eclipse gets taken down. Hyper as well. All of a sudden, it's all down to Canadian. Can he get anything from the Nitro? No. It's going to land on deaf ears, and he will soon falter as well. Astralis claim round 7.
Nitro, unfortunately, giving away Canadians' hold there in the final seconds of the round makes it all too predictable for Panba to work himself over and shut down the last player there. Overall, very, very well played. Takedown of the site setup from Astralis, taking control of all of the surrounding areas and slowly swarming in against what DZ had to hold, much like our previous rounds as well. Relative inaction going up to that final minute there as Astralis needed all that time to figure out what exactly the setup looked like. But when they're ready to execute, they execute in nearly flawless fashion there and are able to take down most of the more surprise positions from DZ without much of an issue.
Now, I would just like to remind you guys that regulation win or overtime win here for Astralis means that the Sonics will be going to Sweden. For DarkZero, it's a necessity to win this one as well as looking forward. If they get past this, they also have to win again later today. So a lot of implications here for them, and really a lot of stress to be had as well. That's the biggest thing here, is you got to think about the mental gymnastics that DarkZero is going through. You know, they're playing this all right now just for a ticket to be able to go to Sweden. Not even to, you know, get ahead in Sweden or anything like that. That's just to get into the damn tournament.
And the Sonics, of course, will be very, very happy to have that opportunity to
go
back
they're praying on their downfall
major.
right now. They're like, Canadian, just blow it down your leg. Oh, you guys, please. I want to see everyone with goose eggs. I'm saying they're probably just like super happy that Hyper picked up that that operator as well with Oryx. They're like, yeah, play Oryx, man, please, thank you.
We saw obviously an interesting performance out of Sonics back in the Mexico major, where they had a pretty promising first game, but it just kind of went downhill.
LATAM got him, man. LATAM got him good. Fury was just, Furia, I do believe actually was the team that ended up beating them on Coastline, and wow, what a game that one was. So I believe Furia also beat SSG there as well, which was just an insane game. And if you guys haven't seen that one, make sure to go back to the Mexico City Major and watch that, but obviously not right now, as we're already 20 seconds into round 8 here, where DarkZero are trying to find the equalizer.
It's going to be a slow process once again, folks, which should be no surprise to you folks at this point, considering especially the DarkZero have gone back to a basement hold here. Now, of course, a little bit risky on that first site choice from DarkZero going towards the open area, so considering that, returning again to one that we're much more used to seeing our teams play onto should be a better sign for them if they're going to have the strategy to win things out here. Astralis, though, still taking their jolly old time. It is going to be upstairs control if they prioritize first. Iconic currently working on droning out the open area to make sure there's not an extended hold, and away from that, DP Fire will probably be moving in to reassure that is going to be under their control in just a second. And we'll see the team start to work more on the descent from that point forward.
There's no way that DarkZero's plan with Oryx right now is wait for Astralis to pop all of these hatches where they're not really, you know, paying attention to all of them at the same time, and then just have Hyper hop up them. You know, that's what it's feeling like, because if you look across the board, all the hatches are reinforced. So obviously Oryx really can't do anything with closed hatches, so it's going to be really up to them to see which one of these hatches will be abusable, and a possibility for Hyper to get a pretty cheeky rotation. To see how that ends up breaking down. Those Astralis have already found their mark, or at least the space that they want to work from initially. It's going to be inside of server, and at the halfway mark through this round, it's going to be fairly straightforward. The only big deal right now is that Canadian is over in Gold Vault. This is, I mean, this is just a Pulse Classic right here. I'll be honest with you guys. This is one that we've been doing all the way since like year 1 on Bank. To sit inside of there, and you can get basically all of server inside of your vision. You can see the far wall that they usually end up blowing up, as well as the bottom of the stairwell, and that's the biggest pieces here. Canadian will be able to tell everyone that, well, Shuttle's currently planning, or he can stop it himself with this, like that. So the diffuser's going to go down, and somebody's going to have to go pick that up.
Canadian, as we are going to see with the Nitro Cell there, stops the initial pressure from Astralis working their way in. With the case now going down to the ground, as you were talking about a couple rounds back, this is a very, very tough site to work yourself into, whether it's retake or pushing for the outright aggression instead. The good news is, though, wasn't committed outright to the inside, so they can still have Retro move forward, pick it up, and try this again. Man, Iconic is going to take a whole load of shots. They'll be finished off by Hyper. NJR as well will accidentally knock out Canadian as he drifts a bit too close to the Toxic Babes, and that now leaves Astralis in control here. Obviously still going to be down a player compared to what DZ have to offer here, but they've got the plant down, and now they switch their hold. Down one, but we're going to see DZ try to pull off the same thing, as they're going to look to pinch against this post-plant hold from Astralis by working themselves over towards blue stairs. Astralis have considered this, though. We can see DP Fire in position to shut down Hyper. He'll do that quite well. Another one's still going to work himself his way, though, and that's going to be Eclipse that he'll also have to take down. Not a whole lot of time left here for DarkZero to get themselves onto the site again, and also not a whole lot of players to pull off the counter defuse, and now none left as well, as Retro and Jane I know get the ceiling kills, and we'll see Astralis push that much closer to a map point.
Poor Smoke there. NJR, I mean, all of the utility that he used, just very lackluster. Not able to really get any damage onto either of the planters, as well as his last smoke falling short as well, and actually killing Canadian, which was the only person to actually get preventable utility out into the proper space to prevent the first plant. So just super unfortunate there for DZ, kind of falling to pieces there. And honestly, guys, this is where it starts to get pretty risky. I mean, Astralis, they're 1 round away from getting up and on to match and map point. And that's where things, I mean, for DarkZero, you really, really want to get as many rounds on the board as you can right now, because that's that only mistake that you're going to be allowed to make for the next 3 rounds. So the more rounds you get, the more opt you are to at least force overtime, or, you know, if you're feeling spicy, 4 rounds in a row does beg you the win.
Right, well, we'll see here if DarkZero can make the run for themselves. Astralis as well, those seem to be really in control, especially of these late round scenarios here, based on the first two rounds that we have played out. Unfortunately, DarkZero have been unable to put enough pressure against Astralis as pushes into the site to really fend things off. So as a result of that, we've been seeing Astralis walk through these setups in at least 2 rounds in a row here now, with the first one just being an outright frag fest. This most recent round being much closer, as Astralis did have to lose at least 1 or 2 players in the process of getting their plant down, but DarkZero ultimately did not have enough utility or angle work to be able to stop that plant from going down, and that's obviously when the status of who was controlling the round started to switch up, and that's when we saw Astralis really take control, especially with DP Fire's counterflank position upstairs.
Yeah, well, you know, in in the good nature of Rainbow Six, you need some martyrs in order to get things done, and that's just how it is. Somebody's got to take the bullet, man, you know? Whether it be going to find some information or committing to a plant, somebody's got to do the dirty deeds, and that time around, it happened to be Retro as well as Shuttle, so either way, able to get that case down at a beautiful round one. They definitely need it. So now for DarkZero, it's back to the top floor like we'd noticed before. See what they can necessarily do with this space. Canadian especially playing in a pretty unique position here. But just to remind you guys, they did end up changing the top skylights here. So for some of you, this might feel really weird that he's in this space, but I promise you, he is safe unless somebody jumps down the other side with the quick rush from Arbor Stairs that we're all used to, but more than likely they're going to meet an M590 if they do that. So that is actually going to be a space that he can control for some time with that mute gameplay. So we'll see how that goes.
Attackers have located a bomb.
We're going to see Hyper pretty much instantly deny the drone that they try to throw into the connector here. So Hyper will still be relatively safe in his new position, just on the other side of it. That does not mean that no pressure is going to work its way in, though. Astralis still have quite a bit built up on this rappel. 3 out of 5 of their players, in fact, currently working from this single angle here, trying to put that additional pressure into the site, and more importantly, trying to knock out these bits of utility that are set up close enough to the window for Astralis to manage them. Away from that, though, it's a usual focus on the top square control, and you can see DP Fire already on the inside. He'll send the Flores' explosive drone towards it to try and knock out some of the utility, still sitting on the other end of that wall right there, but unfortunately, it's going to get jammed as he gets a little bit too close to the mute jammer still sitting on the other side of that wall, so he'll lose the capability. Oh, what are you doing here? A second one as well getting wasted.
He got a kill, though.
Yeah, at least the first kill ends up going their way. A bit of unweighted aggression comes out from DZ. It is going to be punished. Panba getting knocked out for that one. But okay, now you've lost some of these explosive drones. I don't know how massively detrimental that'll be to the overall strategy, since thankfully it doesn't look like there's a huge setup remaining inside of the cycle. We'll see that much more clearly here at some point in the next 20 seconds. Astralis is going to begin to be pressured to move in.
I mean, the big thing is that they really didn't try to look into any other options for these Rotero drones either. Just try to bullet right through that opening there, but obviously the mute jammer hampering that quite heavily. Could have also gotten rid of the position here for Canadian on that shield. They do still have one more Rotero drone, but with minimal time, this is looking like Astralis is going to have to go for the execute here. And honestly, this is completely winnable here for DZ, depending on how Hyper does with this. And oh, J9, a beautiful shot. He knows Hyper has to commit eventually and just keeps sending shots down range. And some more beautiful bullets being sent out from J9 deep here into Janitor. Finally, DarkZero start to fight back, but they're just losing bodies too quickly. And Astralis, they're finally coming back onto the board. But DarkZero, they prevented the plant, and now it's up to Canadian, but Retro will find him as well as another inside of the last remaining moments of the round. And Astralis find map point.
Once again, a little bit shaky there on trying to get into the site and actually getting the plant down onto the ground, but it seems the early and mid-round intel gathering from Astralis, their attempts to understand what DarkZero have set up and get information on where all these players are positioned, is paying off in huge dividends by the end of the round, as they're specifically in that situation there. You can see Canadian hiding out in Janitor. It is absolutely no hesitation on the Astralis members moving over there. They knew exactly where he was positioned at and knew exactly how to take him out. And you could see similar things going on from the Rappel players as well, catching those transitions when they were made and making sure that the defense was as weak as possible when Astralis moved into the site.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem as though DarkZero is really prepared for the patience of Astralis. They're doing very similar things on their offenses and gaining the initial map control and then waiting to see exactly what happens with the defense with these rotations and such things. I think what I really like is Astralis' attention to detail on the actual site and getting rid of these castle barricades and opening up these, you know, really manipulative long lines of sight into the area, because that space up top is so difficult to actually play because there's a lot of stuff that you can just simply get shot through. The couch and all of that inside of the office, completely wall bangable. Like, there's no safe space unless that castle barricade's there, or you find one of those little, brick walls to hide behind like we had with Hyper. So for DarkZero, it's really about trying to get out in front of this and really, get to Astralis, try and get some of these initial frags and see really what they can do with that, because right now the strategy on site is just simply not working out.
Well, let's see here as the pause has come out from DarkZero, but it's coming a bit late here. Astralis is already on map and match point. All they need is one more to seal the deal. It's going to be another basement hold coming in from DZ as they'll try to finally lock down a defensive round on this site. One of the more bunker-focused ones here, so a lot less complexity to the overall gameplay here from DarkZero, but still, if one or two things goes wrong, that's going to be the box being opened up by Astralis, and it'll be the method for how they get into the site and collapse the rest of this defense.
Canadian went downstairs and said, okay, NJR, you're off smoke. All right, you're never again. I've got the smoke. Okay. Also, guys, Canadian 7-7 right now as the IGL. He's doing the most. He's got the team on his back, and he's trying to carry them to Sweden. We'll see if he can get it done, but he's put the others into, positions of power across the board. Pambazoo with the Valkyrie, Hyper on Vigil, as well as NJR coming out with the Alibi. So there's a lot of really good guns in play right now for them, including Eclipse, who really is just a jack of all trades. He can really do anything, and he's more than likely going to be playing down low with Canadian and more of that prevent slot over there inside of Red Hall. But we'll have to see what Astralis want to do with this across the board here. Do they want to go for square, or do they want to go for something similar to what DarkZero did on their last round of attacking this, where they just flooded the site and went for the frags?
We'll be finding out soon here as we've got Astralis out on the board, and as usual, they're going to be taking their time with things in the first couple moments of the round. They do have a little bit of aggression pointed out here from DZ to deal with, most notably an NJR positioned over there towards Banana itself, and not the only one either. Hyper's got a position in J. I believe Panba's going to be holding either close to the bottom of Blue Stairs or somewhere on the first floor. A little hard to tell from the silhouette, but we'll see that a little bit later on. As they want to get in the faces of Astralis here. They want to contest them in the early round, and we'll see if that's potentially going to work for them. Ooh. NJR already taking a lot of heat, though. He's been reduced down to a sliver of HP here and needs to try and find some way to fight, but more importantly, fall back here as we can see he was the player off Banana. Oh, what a flip around from him! Sneaks out into the banister and is able to go right up and find the headshot on Retro. Beautifully played.
That's how you get it done, DarkZero. Retro, he feels like he's tagged up NJR so much that there's no way that this man recommits to an angle, but NJR takes the challenge and he wins the gunfight. A single bullet was all that was needed inside of that MX4 Storm, but he made sure to send a couple friends. Astralis now have to clear out this top floor and be very worrisome of what they can do going forward, especially because DP Fire's already got some serious damage done to him, and they need to start breaking up a couple of these, very important pieces. But the biggest thing here is, folks, is look at the timer already. We're already halfway through the round, and guess where the bomb site is? It's in the basement. They have to process this entire floor, then get all the way downstairs, and this is what DarkZero, or rather, what Ubisoft, actually, has changed up about Bank. It's a lot easier to go for these extended holds because there's not as many harsh angles for Astralis to get a hold up, even though, obviously, NJR did take some very serious heat inside of lobby.
Now, Iconic does take a more aggressive step forward. Here, we're going to see Eclipse get very close. Trying to knock out another player will not end up finding the successful angle.
Are you getting hot? I'm getting hot.
DarkZero's waking up, that's for sure, here with their play inside of just this round alone. Now, like we talked about before, they've already moved Shuttle, oh my goodness, as well as Iconic down here to quickly take out the reinforcements on server, but it's not going to matter if DarkZero are able to play this aggression so successfully out from their site. Canadian taking down the hard breacher here in Shuttle. Thankfully, the job of opening things up to get into the site was already done, and now finally things start to turn around for Astralis as Iconic gets the first pick for this squad against Eclipse.
But the time waste is so serious here for Astralis, but they really don't care. Make it a 3 versus 3. We don't care that there's 30 seconds remaining. And oh man, this is one of the best rounds we've had inside of this entire game thus far, folks. If you win at primetime Siege, oh my god, do you have it? Pambazoo will take down Iconic. Astralis have to hop too. They have to get something done, and it's up to J90. He'll be able to take down Pambazoo, and he's going to flood immediately into B. He's got targets all around him. Hyper will hop in inside as well, and JR still with 1 health as well. J90, he's got to dedicate to the plan, and they know he's inside of the B bomb site. DarkZero survive round 10.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful gunplay coming out from DarkZero inside of that round. The individual gunfights that are won on those clutch little headshots there are what makes up the difference and allows them to push it over the edge, especially considering, you know, despite the struggles Astralis had in those first 2 minutes of clearing out the extended game, they still get into the site and nearly negotiate themselves a plant, but it's not enough again because of the early fights. And if they are able to win this one, regardless of if it's an OT win or a regulation win, they will qualify the Sonics going to the major. At the same time, DarkZero is still looking to ascend into a position where they can qualify for the major itself. They have an extra game today due to the swap of the schedule we did at the beginning of the season due to one of their players getting COVID, and now they have an opportunity to sneak back up. You can see they're at number 5 right now, but they could very realistically end up at number 4 if they win both this match and their final one, and a few other teams falter in the other matches today.
Okay, now this round right here is where I'm going to get a little worried, I'll be honest. I think that this is where things can either go very positively for DarkZero, or this is going to be the end of the show here for them. For Astralis, this is going to be a pretty straightforward clear. You really want to get that top control and start working into, you know, the soft breach of J9O and stuff like that, and Retro is going to be a big part of this, but that's the biggest thing. Astralis cannot suffer early damage here, otherwise DarkZero can possibly get away with a lot of this. We honestly saw a lot of rotation from Astralis on this side as well when they played it on defense. Almost a really big play from Shuttle, if you guys remember as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for playmaking inside of this space.
So Astralis will be looking to try and shut things down here, and this is going to be against the site where we saw the least successful defense from DarkZero so far this half. Astralis had no problem at all, especially once they took main stairs control, clearing out the rest of that inside setup. And this round, if I remember correctly, was nearly flawless, if not outright flawless for the Astralis attack here due to how well things went. It's going to be that slow broil, though, just as we saw in pretty much every other round for this map. Astralis need to spend plenty of time on drones. That has been their forte for this matchup here to get the intel necessary to isolate out the individual members of DarkZero and go for one clean, swift execute in order to win the round.
Oh, very similar straights here for Astralis inside of this round as we saw from the last, which means Canadian will more than likely, I know, Iconic is around this space soon enough if he does step up into Gold Vault, but might take some time for him. It's going to be a clear here for Astralis across the board, and this is exactly how they need to be handling this. Need to make sure that they know where the current positioning of these DarkZero members are on this mid floor, get a head count, and see necessarily what they need to deal with off-site. That's the big play here, especially when you're able to get that count early and be like, okay, yeah, there's 2 people inside a site, we got to deal with 3 roamers, let's see what we can get done. That's going to be the game plan right now for Astralis. They've also got control of that top floor like we were talking about. They really want to get up here, get control of these hatches, and start getting J9 into positions of power to start using that sledgehammer, break up some of this floor, and force DarkZero into some pretty unsafe waters.
But with a harsh angle here to try and punish the positions being taken up by Astralis on the other side towards the open area, or rather towards the front of the building itself, but neither one going to be met with too successful of a fight there. As no damage is taken by either party. And I know, of course, working on the top-down angles here from the sledge now that we have seen Astralis take the full second floor control, but it's not necessarily going to translate to any sort of immediate impact here. As you can see, DarkZero will be dodging these angles for the most part here, so J9O will not be able to find anything inside of the first 2 minutes, and on top of that, again, we are falling into the last minute or so of play here, so Astralis going to have to start putting the pressure a bit closer to the site, and I'm not sure if they've made as much success in figuring things out as they had on the last attempt here.
Well, now, Astralis inside of the 5 versus 5, the first fight goes their way as well as DP Fire eviscerates Eclipse on Marble. That's going to be a huge player down here as well as some very solid info onto 2 other members here, and DP Fire well aware that someone can flank him from the stairwell, but does he know that it's 2? He'll step up to the plate and try and get something done inside of sight, assisting Iconic will get yet another kill here, and DarkZero now down to the last 2 members. And guess what? They know exactly where they're coming from as well. This is unbelievably scary for them in the moment, but this case still needs to go down. DP Fire will start that up as Pambazoo will drop in. Can't get the initial shots. Canadian can, though, as he's now down into the 1 versus 3. But this is for Sweden, folks. Right here, right now, the 1 versus 3. Can Troy get it done? Can he head back to the major? We haven't seen him in so long inside of a LAN. He'll be able to get the initial one, but what does he do with this time here? 30 seconds remaining inside of this clutch. He knows where the next target is, but does he know anybody is close? Has the one back, gets the second one, and oh my god, Canadian. It's a triple kill for him. Big bad Canadian on the steamroll right now, and J9 seals the deal. Canadian can't get it done, and DarkZero doesn't have enough in the tank.
Almost had another screaming clip there from Canadian, the worst gun in the game again, and he almost does it. Seems like that gun works out pretty well for him, but he's going to fall just short in this instance. Instead, it's Astralis taking control of this matchup here at the bitter